This is the height physique scale, showing the correlation of your height to your physique based on 3 key areas: aesthetics, appeared size, and leverage/strength. This is a topic not a lot of people talk about, but height obviously plays a massive role in building an aesthetic physique, and it's going to determine how aesthetic you are, how much you can lift in the gym. Yeah, and this isn't like a black pill video or anything, because there's actually benefits to being short and being tall, and you just got to learn to deal with the cards you've been dealt. And sometimes being short necessarily isn't a bad thing in some areas. And guys, this is a cope-free zone. If you've watched our videos before, you know we don't cope. So this video is gonna be pretty brutal. So if you can't handle the brutal truth, this is a serious reminder to just click off the video. Have a good day, because if you're starting your day watching this video and you are short, you're probably not gonna have a good one. So to start off, we'll talk about aesthetics. Aesthetics is how visually appealing your physique is. Think of guys like Ziz, John Skywalker, our Pookie Bear, David Lade. Even classic physique competitors compete based off aesthetics for the most part. So to start off, we have 5'2", 5'4". They're pretty much the same thing. It's very rare that someone is this short, but if they are, they have a pretty special circumstance where there's no real amount of muscle that you could put on where you could look aesthetics based on the proportions of their physique. And we put here, like, sorry bro, like, you're never gonna really look impressive and aesthetic on camera and off camera, and that's just the reality of it. Like we said, we're not gonna cope and say you're somewhere up here when you're just not. That's not to say it's not possible to look aesthetic. It very well is possible, but the combination of those aesthetic, sort of slimmer genetics combined with you being 5'2" to 5'4" is very unlikely, but we're not completely ruling it out. There could still be guys 5'2" to 5'4" that look very aesthetic on camera, but it's just a lot rarer. Once you hit 5'6", it's almost a threshold where your muscles sort of start to even out on your frame and look less stocky, and it's all uphill from there really, up until you hit about 6 foot. But even at like 5'10", 5'9", this is still a great balance. And this is actually some of the most aesthetic guys on the internet, because you can't judge size on like through a computer screen. A lot of the most aesthetic guys online could be like 5'9", 5'8" even. But if we're talking about aesthetics in general, combining that with how they look in real life, it keeps going up from 5'10". And then we can see at about 6'1" to 6'4", this is peak aesthetics category. This is where you get your David Lade, your John Skywalker. David Lade, I believe, is like 6'2". There might be a bit of inflation going on there. He might be like slightly shorter, but he does look 6'2". And then John Skywalker is about 6'4". Even Chris Bumstead is, I think, like 6'1" or 6'2". Same thing with Arnold Schwarzenegger. A lot of the most aesthetic, like well-shaped guys, they're all above 6 foot. The reason this looks more aesthetic is because it just looks slimmer. It looks more pleasing to the eye. Things start inserting a bit better, and they can literally put on more muscle mass without looking too stocky and looking too much like those meatheads that you see online. And then from like 6'5", I'd say, to like 6'6", it does start to go downhill. You just tend to sort of look a little bit more lanky, and things are just thrown out of proportion a little bit, but it's a very rare set of guys that are above like 6'6". Like, I've noticed this myself, and tall guys can relate. I'm 6'4", and it took a very long time to fill out my physique to where it looked like I could even lift. Like, I get a lot of comments online saying like, bro, there's no way this took you 3 years to achieve this physique, but they don't understand. It's just gonna take you a bit longer to fill out your frame. But when you do, that's when you start looking aesthetic. We're not saying that this scale is based off a complete gym journey. You've got your final form physique. All right, next, let's get into your appeared size. Now, this isn't like absolute size, because obviously the tall guys are gonna weigh more. They're gonna technically be bigger, but this is appeared size. So how big you look, mainly on camera. And you can see that at like 5'2", all the way up to 5'6", you'd think that these guys would appear the biggest, but I feel like this is where you're so short that even that comes through the camera. Even in real life, you're just a smaller sort of individual, especially when you're compared to other people. If you start networking, if you've got like a personal brand at this level and you start standing next to people, people are gonna start to, you know, realize you're not actually that big. And then I'd say 5'9" is peak. And 5'7" is the average Mr. Olympia competitor size. And this is because it's tall enough where you don't look short through the camera, but it's also small enough where an equal amount of muscle mass compared to someone that's like 6'4" or something like that looks way bigger. And then it's not that much of a drop off, honestly, from 5'9" up until 6 foot. It's just a gradual decline. Now, guys that are 6 foot could even be like a sweet spot where you can still look like you're big and not too stocky, But at 6'4" to 6'6", it just gets very hard to fill out that frame. And a lot of you tall guys will relate to that struggle, but it's such a hard struggle. Yeah, you guys have a good problem. And if you guys want to know specifically where you stand on this scale, because it is very dependent on the person, that's why we do physique analyses now. So you can go to that first link in the description and you can get a full custom analysis by us. We'll actually spend time to look at your physique, judge you on your weak points and your strong points. Based off of your statistics, you can just send through a few photos and we'll give you a full game plan on how to improve on those weak points and what to do moving forward. All right, so now we go into leverage slash strength. So this is basically how much you're going to be able to lift in the gym relative to your weight. So it's mainly the leverage we're talking about here. So the main reason tall guys just won't be able to lift as much is because they just have to move the weight further. I look ridiculous on a bench press. I have to move it so far compared to someone that's just shorter, which is going to help them out in terms of lifting more relative to how much they weigh. So yeah, at 5'2" to 5'4", you have insane leverages, especially for things like bench press. Really short guys, even midgets, have been seen doing powerlifting competitions for bench press because they just don't have to move the weight as far. And even from 5'6" to 5'8", it's a great height for bench press. This is me coping for not lifting that much, but you should still have a good strength relative to your weight. Yeah, and there's just sort of a gradual decline the taller you get because of the leverages. However, I will say being tall isn't necessarily a deficit for deadlifts. Taller guys actually sometimes even have a better time deadlifting because they have such longer arms and better leverages for that in general. But in terms of bench press and even other lifts like military press and other free weight exercises, you'll have a very hard time. And we do have to mention something as well, that this sort of graph is a combination of online and in person. If we were talking about just in person, if the internet didn't exist, the aesthetics and the appeared size graph would be skewed way more towards taller, because tall guys in general, when you see them walking around the gym or in public, just have way more presence. They look bigger in general. They look like just bigger humans, and they tend to just look more aesthetic because they're just more appealing to the eye, and especially for the female gaze as well. You could be as aesthetic or as shredded and as strong and as big as you want being under 5'6", but females will almost just sort of ignore that, and it is kind of brutal. Once again, we're going to mention it's a cope-free zone here. And we're also not factoring in actual proportionate genetics. So we're not even factoring in like how small someone's waist is or how broad someone's shoulder is in this whole equation, right? Because there might be a guy at 5'6" with an insanely tight waist and broad as fuck shoulders, and he's going to look more aesthetic than someone that's like 6'4" and just has like this blocky waist. This is just like a general idea. The actual graph for you could be so different, which is why we highly recommend getting that personal physique analysis, because a lot of it honestly is in your head. And this is the case with pretty much everyone that we analyze. They're always like, wow, I thought that was a weak point. I'm like, no, bro, that's literally your strong point and this is your weak point. And the last question you might be asking is, well, what the fuck can I even do about this data? Because I get a lot of comments about that too. Like, yeah, cool, but what can I even do about it? Well, what you can do about it is leverage your height for your opportunity. So being shorter, obviously you're going to be better at powerlifting. Being around like 5'8" to 5'10", social media is going to look like much of a better option for you because you're going to be able to look way bigger than you actually are, or just look more proportionate in general. At 6'1", 6'4", start to build a really aesthetic physique and really try to push building size onto your frame. At 6'1" and 6'4" and around this category, you have to really pack on some size to look impressive. Let us know in the comments what you think of this. Most likely we'll have a bunch of short guys in there just absolutely just rage quitting. You have to be pretty mature to look at this stuff and not take it personally, but I almost understand. And yes, you can build an impressive physique at any height. We're not saying that it's over for literally anyone. There's pretty much always something you can do, including limb lengthening now. Like, this shit is crazy. That's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Click on that first link down below if you want a more in-depth analysis on this stuff. It's got every detail you need to know. Thank you all for 10K. We love you all. We'll see you in the next one.